13, 14. It's been a while. Years go by quick. But thank you very much for your support. You recognize any people in this picture, Scott?
Yeah, I remember that picture.
This is the first time I ever met Scott Jelinek. This was in 2016. There's some big folks in that room. Joe McCall's in there, and Alex Pardo, and Sean McCloskey, Victor Moss. There's some Chris. What's Chris's last name?
Which Chris?
Scott Orban, Chris Arnold. Awesome folks in this room I got to be a part of many years back. And I share this photo because if I wasn't in that room and I hadn't met Scott, this meeting would not be here. This meeting wouldn't exist. I started what was ALARIA at the time, Alabama Real Estate Investor Association, that later turned into some other names. It was birthed in that room, right there. And this just goes back to got to get in the right room. You got to be in the room. You got to be in the small rooms, the small environments, and be around people who can challenge you. Be around people who can, hey, you know what? You're thinking too small. You're asking the wrong question. You came in here thinking, or how do I do this? Well, it's really, you should have been asking, who do you need to help you get there? And so I came in asking a completely wrong question, and I left there, started a podcast, launched a group, launched a bunch of stuff, ended up doing seminars because of Scott. All this stuff was really because the conversations that Scott and I had, who had already started his seminar business, all that came from that. And since 2016, had an opportunity to go see him speak at his big event that he did in Virginia Beach the next year. That's water, by the way. And then when we were speaking at another event, I had a snazzy jacket on at the time. It's just been, my friendship with Scott goes way beyond real estate. I can call him, I can text him and talk about anything. We sat in Buffalo Wild Wings for 4 hours yesterday watching football. We can just talk about anything and everything. And I just owe a lot of what I've been able to do in real estate. And then in the periphery of real estate, which is maybe what these meetings are, because of Scott. So Scott, I just want to say I appreciate you. And with all that being said, I hope you guys, you're in for a treat tonight. He's the real deal. He's not just a guru. He's someone who reluctantly wrote this book. This is something that people have been telling him to do for years and years and years. He's like, I don't want to do that. I have a simple life and my life's great. And he ended up doing this. And I'm just glad you're here. I know you don't travel to speak a lot, but thank you for coming to Birmingham. So guys, please give a big Birmingham welcome to Scott Jelinek.
That was a hell of an introduction.
Thank you, my friend. Glad you're here. All right, while you give an intro, I'm going to get your slides up.
All right. So this is only my 4th time in my life traveling to speak. 3 times I've been here in Birmingham.
Sorry.
This is not what I do. I don't travel and speak. And I got to speak quick today because he said we have to be out of here by midnight. They shut the place down, and I don't want you guys getting stuck in here with half a presentation, so I'm going to get you guys done. So while he's getting that done, I'm going to tell you, so I'm staying, you guys, I'm guessing are all local here, right? I'm staying at the Tutwiler. Anybody know where that is? So I didn't sleep the night before because football game was on late, and then I had a 5 o'clock flight in the morning. That was a poor move, but it was the only flight that was available. So then looking forward to getting some sleep last night, and I swear it was like my cousin Vinny. There was cars racing, then there's a train going by, there's trucks unloading. I was texting my wife, I said, this is like a joke. I started just laughing to myself. Another train will go by. I don't know if anyone's ever stayed there. They got I guess we're right on the train tracks and trains go by all night long. So I had a fun night pretending to sleep, exhausted, staying up until it all ended. But looking forward to being here. This is my 3rd time speaking in Birmingham, once for your group and then once for your other group. I don't travel at all. I spoke for one other person, which was Damon in Arizona. Other than that, I've been strictly local for the entire time. So how many people in the room have even heard of slow flips or what we're talking about today? All right, so it's probably a good half of the room. So I want to tell you in advance, some of you guys are going to hate slow flips, and that's okay. Every time I talk to people, there's sometimes when we're done, people are like, well, I hate it for this reason, and this reason. That's okay. Some of you will absolutely love it, and it will change the trajectory of your life. Completely, I'm all in, that's what I want to do, I can understand it, and I see where the value is in that. For those of you who hate it, I understand, and it's okay if you want to work harder for less money. That's okay, and it's normal. A lot of people want to do that, no big deal, and you can do it as well. But there will be people who hate it. Don't feel bad if you do. It goes against your nature. If you've been to courses and trainings and listened to a lot of people, it kind of goes against everything that everyone teaches. And so I generally try and tell people that in advance. Even when I do my local event, I'm like, just so you know, everything I say is going to be almost 100% the opposite of what you've been taught. Take with that what you will. So let me see if this thing works. Brian, do you have this thing working, or what are you doing here? I don't know. I'm not a tech guy, and obviously neither is Brian. I had to take an Uber. I had to take an Uber to Office Max to get this on the way here because, because this guy here said, "Oh, I forgot the clicker." I said, "Oh, that's fantastic." So I'll Uber on my way over here from the Tutwiler and make a stop over at Office Max or Office Depot. There we go. Attaboy. So, in the meantime, entertain yourselves. Maybe read a little bit of your book. Actually, just read the book. It'll take about 2 hours, and then let us know what you think about it. Yeah, buddy.
Here, talk about that for a second.
All right. Well, anyway, what he's going to tell you next is, if you can't tell by my rate of speech or what little of my accent I have left, I'm originally from New York. I moved to Virginia in 1992. I still live in Virginia Beach. I do most of my investing in Virginia, but now we do in a few other states. What we teach, though, can be done completely remotely. I used to tell people not to do remote. I loved investing solely where I can see and touch the houses. And then I started to realize that half of my houses I haven't never even seen, even though they're only 30 minutes away. I've never seen them, never gone to them. So I was like, well, what's the difference if they're 30 minutes away or 6 hours away, since I don't go there anyway? I've never seen them. So I'm just going to speak without the slides while he works on that. So just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I dropped out of school in 11th grade when I was 16 years old. There he goes. And I sold candy in school. That was what I did. That was kind of my thing. And I never really paid much attention in school, didn't really care about it. Joined the Army when I was 17, was only in the Army for a short time, got back to Long Island. It was during time of war, so I only had to do 2 years back then because it was joined during time of war. And got out, and I started selling sodas on the beach in New York. I don't know if anybody here has ever been to Long Island and seen Jones Beach, but if you've been to Jones Beach, it's different than most beaches you go to in the sense that you park and then you walk for a mile before you hit the ocean. So it was good money in that, walking around on the beach all day selling sodas. Moved to Virginia in 92, started mowing lawns. I enjoyed mowing lawns because, again, I didn't have a real business, had a lawnmower in the back of my trunk, and I would just drive around and look for high grass, right? And it's simple, knock on the door, if you want your lawn cut, $25. And at this time, I lived in a townhouse that I was renting, and my brother and my mother lived in another townhouse, and he got a flyer on his door. And the flyer, and I'm trying to look around who's old enough to remember, but the important part of it was back then, if you guys remember, let me know, they had a thing called non-qualifying assumptions. Does anybody remember that? They did away with them in 87 for FHA and 89 for VA, but what it meant was anybody can take over the mortgage. No credit check, no job check, no pulse, nothing. Anybody, as long as you make a deal with the seller, can take over that mortgage with the bank's blessing. Very similar to a sub-2 now, except that the bank was aware of it. They put the mortgage in your name, not just the deed. Sub-2, the deed goes in your name. With a non-qualified assumption, they put the mortgage in your name as well. The reason I'm sharing this with you is because it's relevant to what I ended up doing in the future. So this one was $5,000 down and $675 a month. I was already paying $675 a month where I was renting. Had zero interest in real estate. However, I thought it was better to own than to rent. Made sense. I figured if I'm paying anyway, I might as well own the place. Well, shortly after I bought this place, probably 2-3 weeks after, a sign comes up on the block that said $2,000 down, take over payments. And I was pissed because I just spent $5,000 down and this one was $2,000 down. Now, mind you, I didn't know anything about the value. I didn't know anything about the equity, the work, or anything at all, other than I paid $5,000 down and this one was $2,000 down. So my genius brain said, let me buy that one also. I said, if I buy that one also, then I can cost average out and I'm $3,500 each. Better than $5,000, right? So I bought the second one and I started to rent it. And I'm not that bright of myself, but I was renting it for $675. My payment was about $675, so I wasn't making any money. which again, I didn't know anything about anything, so obviously that's not a good plan. So, but that was my plan. That's when I came up with what I always called my McDonald's plan. And my McDonald's plan was simple, and it has nothing to do with McDonald's whatsoever. I never worked there, but it was something I used to always tell everybody. I became obsessed with buying non-qualifying assumptions. Generally, they were $5,000 down, $3,000 down, some as low as $500 down. And I used to tell everybody my plan was I'm going to buy $1 million worth of these properties, and I can go work at McDonald's for 30 years if I want, and I'll be a millionaire. That was my plan. That was literally my entire plan, was just buy them and wait. Which clearly, as you know, for those of you who have rentals, how many in the room have rentals? All right, so a good chunk of you. So you guys know it's not as simple as that. Between repairs, vacancy, people not moving out, having to evict, and everything else, and I was renting for the same amount I was paying in a mortgage. Wasn't the brightest of ideas, but I was making it work. I was still mowing lawns, and I was making it work, and we were moving along. Well, then in 2001, something changed, and for those of you that have been investing a long time, I bought my first house, I don't know if I told you the year, it was 1994. In 2001, I had already acquired 20 properties. They were mostly Virginia Beach properties, and they were all non-qualifying assumptions, and I just rented them. I didn't do any wholesaling, rehabs, anything. I just bought them and waited out time with my plan. Well, in 2001, for those of you who've been investing a long time, you remember what happened in 2001, we finally started seeing appreciation. Up until then, I was buying the houses for the same price that people bought them for in 85 and 86 and 87. I was taking over their mortgages. They didn't get any value gain. I was just paying them out whatever little equity they had, which was a couple $1,000s. In 2001, I'm driving around and I'll call on a townhouse that I know should be $65,000 and they tell me 90. And then, maybe by 2002, I call and they tell me it's 130. And I'm like, they're out of their mind until I see, no, everything's going for these prices. So then I started thinking, maybe I don't have to wait 30 years, right? I was like, maybe my 30-year plan could be done sooner. So that's when I started reading all the books, which I'm sure you guys have read all of them, buying all the courses, going to the local seminars. And you learn a lot, obviously, right? I started learning all the real estate stuff. I had no clue what I was already doing. Well, one of the things they taught to do and still teach to do, which you guys may or may not be doing, but I am wholeheartedly against it, was they love to teach leverage. Pull all your equity out. It's dead money. Pull your money out, and then you can buy more houses. And pull that equity out and buy more houses. And so I did. And so I bought a ton of houses. I would refinance. This house is now worth $165. I only owe $50 on it. They would give me 80%. I would pull all that money out and put it down on new houses. And then 2007 came. And everybody says 2008, but I still have my QuickBooks, and I can tell you it was 2007 when the world fell off a cliff. And I had 84 houses by 2007. And overnight, I had 30-40% of them not paying. And, everybody's like, oh, don't worry, you have reserves. I had almost $1 million in cash saved. Almost $1 million. I was like 980 in cash saved. I had plenty of reserves. The houses became upside down, vacant, not paying, and I don't know how it was in Alabama, but I can tell you how it was in Virginia. It was a disaster. And I started losing money to the tune of about $25,000 to $35,000 a month. And I still have it in the book. It's in plastic sheets, and I flip through it every now and then just as a reminder so I don't put myself in that position again, losing it. But I kept paying because I fought the good fight, right? I'm like, well, I've worked all these years for it, and it's got to turn around. Things are going to get better, and until I ran out of money. Can anybody guess what happened when I ran out of money? You know what happened. I ended up losing about 55 of them to foreclosure. And foreclosure is hard on anybody, right? Well, it's especially hard when my Escalade is wrapped in we buy houses, stop foreclosure, right? That's what we did. Stop foreclosure, stop foreclosure. I lost 55 of those houses into foreclosure, and it was a devastating time. I lost every dollar I had. I still maintained some of the houses, which I still have to this day. I lost the rest of them all to foreclosure. One of the interesting things, which is not, you can Google it and you will not get these results, but I can tell you as a fact, if you were to Google right now, how much did the market go down during the bust, right? They'll tell you all kinds of numbers. Oh, it went down 22%, 30%, 18%, or whatever numbers they want to give you. But I can tell you as a fact, because I bought some of these same houses back. I'll give you an example. I have a house that I bought for $120,000. It appraised when I bought it at $199,000. The bank gave me a $150,000 mortgage. They gave me an 80% mortgage. That house got foreclosed on, and I bought that house again. I still own it to this day for $30,000. Everybody's like, oh, they went down 20%. It's not that big of a deal. I said, no, they didn't go down like that. That might be what they show in their data, but that is not what the banks were selling them for. They weren't going down 20%. It was devastating, crushing blow to the real estate prices. And again, I don't know how it was in Alabama, but I can tell you how it was in Virginia. It was devastating, crushing blows. So I ran out of money, and now I got foreclosed on, and I spent about almost a whole year still showing up at the office, but I had no work, no income, and just like, I don't know what to do. You couldn't rehab back then. It was really hard anyway because the banks were going out of business, and it was a short turnover time. It started getting good by late 2008. Things were coming back together, but there was a time where the banks were going out of business, and it was just a challenging time, and I had no more money left. But now the houses were the best prices I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, this house, I paid $120 for it, and I can buy it for $30. But I don't have any money left. And so a few things happened that evolved me into what it is that we do today. And that's a big one, which is why I wanted to share it with you. So I can explain a few things, because sometimes I get the argument of, when you hear about what I do, well, why are we sticking to that price point? Why are we letting people in without this? And I'll tell you exactly why, because that's how I got started. And I'm very big on, no matter how much people can use their calculator to show me that you'll make more money by using debt, you will never convince me that that's the way to go. Never. Because I did all of that, and I see what can happen if it doesn't go perfect. And you can make a lot more money doing the debt model, don't get me wrong. You absolutely can make more money, but it's always in play, and anything can happen, and I want it to be secure. So I've been real estate investing now for 30 years, which makes me feel really old when I say that. I remember when I started doing events, and I think that slide said 23 years, and I was like, oh, that makes me feel old. And now it hit 30 years this year that I have been buying houses. I have closed probably 900 deals by now. They're all local, mostly in my local market. The ones that I have in other markets, I don't consider those to be deals because they're houses I keep. But I've wholesaled and rehabbed over 800, close to 900 deals in my local market. I currently own 178 houses, and these are all slow flips. I have 0 rentals. In my mastermind group, there was a shirt on this mastermind cruise that said, I got 99 houses, but I don't rent one. And it's funny to me because we have a lot of houses, but we do not rent any of them. We are not landlords, and that's what we're going to get into today. So currently I have 178 of them. I average about 40 wholesale deals a year. I do 0 marketing now, so we're not going to talk about wholesaling today, but I still wholesale. I love wholesaling. I always will, because you go in, you meet, I'm a living room guy. I don't do the phone and all that. I sit in someone's living room, make an offer, and I wholesale deals. We do really well with them with very little marketing, mostly organic and networking, referrals. I average about 40 deals a year, but on those 40, we crush them. And 12, I always say, is the number that I am most proud of. Ever since I revamped this business, after we dusted ourselves off from the bust, I tried to revise it instead of what we all do, which is to figure out your business and then what kind of life you can fit into the time that's left. We decided we wanted to figure out what we want our life to look like, and then what kind of business can we fit into the time that's left. So we flipped it on its head. So 12 is the number of weeks I spend traveling with my family every year. We do a great job at putting our life first and not making business first. And that's hard, because you guys know when money's good and you're making good money, it's easy to be like, well, I'm just going to leave that money on the table. How could I not do this deal? And it's hard to say no to things. There's tons of opportunity. People drown in opportunity. But we made a decision way back when we dusting ourselves off from the bust, that we were going to put our life first. And if it means we leave money on the table, we leave money on the table. But it's not going to be where we're chasing every dollar and we just can't enjoy our lives, right? My son is 15 now, so you can do the math on his age. He was born in 2009. I said, it's you only have these X amount of years, so you can spend them making more money, which in the end nobody's going to care about, or you can spend time doing all the things that it is that you want to do. So we've made a point of our entire business to be based around our life and not around which way can you make the most money. And I know that is hard. People always like to say, oh, well, that's easy for you because of this, or that's easy for you because of that. I said, no, that was a decision when we didn't have anything. That was a decision in advance. And I really think it's important, if that's something that resonates with you, to make that, like actually on a calendar. I just left a group where we were talking about this. You have to, even your family has to be on the calendar, because otherwise, you know what happens. We work all the time. And if it's not on the calendar, it just doesn't happen. And so we tried to change it to, no, that's scheduled. I travel a lot with my son to ball games, and he schedules me out. As soon as the schedule's released, he's like, what about this one? What about this one? What about this one? And then it's on my calendar 6 months in advance. So everything else that comes up, including like when Brian said, can you come here? The first thing I had to look at is, well, do I have a game that week, or else I wouldn't be able to. So I have it all mapped out in advance so we don't have to say no. So slow flips. I know I talk fast, but I'm trying to get you out of here before midnight. If you can't keep up, you're going to have to listen a little faster. But luckily, you got a book you can follow with. So slow flips is, in my opinion, the absolute best way for a income, for a cash flow lifestyle. I try to tell people that if you are looking for Lamborghinis and yachts, then this is not for you. And I've realized that I have a group of people that I work with personally, and I've realized throughout that group, the people who are in my group resonate with that. They are not the Lamborghini chasers and, oh, we're going to get a mansion. Doesn't mean you can't. Doesn't mean, we have guys in the room, in the group who have more houses than I do already. They're killing it. It doesn't mean you can't do all of that, but that is not what it's designed for. In my opinion, what it's designed for is to set you free. We do an exercise, and we're not going to do it today because of time constraint, but where we do working on your future vision and putting a dollar amount next to it and then backing it out to how many slow flips do we need to reach that number. And that's your freedom number, right? So you can be free. So it doesn't mean if you still love rehabbing or if you love wholesaling or you love everything else, it doesn't mean any of that stops. It means this is so that you're free. So you don't have to do anything. That's it. If you need 10 grand a month, we get to the 10 grand a month, that's when you're free. You can still do all that other stuff. You just don't have to do that stuff. So let me tell you about the great rental myth. And I think about half of this room has rentals. So you can agree with me or disagree with me, but I know what my data shows through my QuickBooks. But I call it a myth because most people teach and train that you need to have $300 a month in profit, and there's two different sides of it. The profit side and then the refi side, and I'll get into both. One is they talk about having $300 a month, in excess, right? That's your cash flow and it's profit, and and you need 3 grand. So if you have 10 houses, you're 3 grand positive. I have people that have come to me and they have 50 houses and they're like, I don't understand. I should be profiting $25,000 a month, but I'm breaking even every month, or whatever the numbers may be. And we go through their books and it's literally the same every single time. The average rental, and I can't speak for Alabama, but I think this is nationwide, the average rental maintenance is about $300 a month. Now, sometimes people say, well, I haven't done any maintenance in a year. I haven't spent $1 in 2 years. What are you talking about? $300? He's out of his mind, right? I don't spend that money. I haven't spent anything. You might not. And then 4 years later, you may have a turnover and you have to carpet, paint, replace the air conditioner, or whatever may need to be done, and it all goes back into it. And in the end, you end up at around $300 a month. I call it the great rental myth because mostly everything that gets taught for getting into rentals is a myth. I always joke and say that I believe it was invented by the banks. I said, I think the banks came up with a way to how can we make money off all these houses without the headache of owning them? And they were like, well, let's do a seminar and tell people to own rentals, and then they can get a mortgage on it, finance the heck out of it, and then pay us every month, and then they do all the work. And that's kind of the way it is. So let's talk about the flip side of it, the rental myth, which is the leverage model. Everybody talks the same story, and I'll use easy numbers. They say, well, if you have $100,000, you can buy one house cash for $100,000, or you can buy 10 houses with $10,000 down each, and now you have $1 million worth of properties, right? And then they proceed to tell you, and if the market just goes up 10%, with the cash model, you have $10,000 extra in equity, but with the leverage model, you have $100,000 extra in equity. You made a 100% return if it went up just 10%, which is fascinating and awesome, right? Why wouldn't you do that? And if it goes up 20%, right? All these bigger numbers. Nobody ever talks about what happens if it goes down. Because again, they're like, well, if it goes down 10%, well, it doesn't, but then you're still even. And everybody acts like rents never go down. Guess what? They do. I don't know how it is here, but I can tell you rents do go down. They act like rents never go down. Don't worry about the value, just worry about the cash flow. I'm a cash flow guy, I agree with you, except that, yes, they can go down. And when you have an underlying mortgage, it can be crippling. I just left a meeting, and I'm not going to mention the person, but he owns 600-something units and is making no money with them. And 600-something, and he's so proud of the amount of houses he has, but he's making no money. And when we naturally said, sell them, he can't, because he already did the accelerated depreciation on them. He said, if I sell them, I'm going to have to pay so much money in depreciation recapture, and I don't have that money. So he's losing every month, and it's a disaster. But again, that's what's taught. He loves, I have no money into them. I use the Burr method. And okay, well, you do what you want to do. So anyway, with that leverage model, if it went down, you would wipe out your whole money if you had the leverage model. If it went down just 10%, your 100's gone. Now you have 9 houses you owe $90,000 on. Not the end of the world if they're still filled and producing. Not the end of the world. You're not selling them anyway. Who cares? If it goes down 30%, well, now you owe 70 grand on these houses that are, I'm sorry, you owe 90 grand on these houses that are only worth 70. and you still have to make the payments on them. Again, if they're filled and producing, not the end of the world, except when there's mass vacancies. Now you're paying money to maintain a house that doesn't even have any equity in it. And that's just reality. That's just the way it goes. And I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I'm just speaking from experience. I love the BRRRR method when it works. And to be honest with you, I've been talking about how bad it is for so long that I think back to how long it's been now, since about 2009. And if you started in 2009 or later, it's been great. So basically everything I said is like, well, Scott's out of his mind because I started in 2009 or 10 or 11 and it has been fantastic. In which case, hopefully you did a 15-year mortgage and you'd be nearing the end of them anyway, because time flies. Sometimes I have PTSD for the bust, so for me it was yesterday. And sometimes I look at the calendar, I'm like, man, that's a long time ago now. We're talking, that's 15, 16 years. So yeah, it works great as long as it continues to work. So I have a vision in my head that I like to share with people, and that's Mr. Burns. You guys know him from The Simpsons, right? This vision that I try and place into people's heads is I picture any city you go into, the tall buildings have a bank logo on the side, and I picture Mr. Burns sitting at the top of that building, doing what Mr. Burns does, waiting on you to run along and send him his money. And by run along, he means go to put that tenant in there, go fix that air conditioning unit that got stolen, go replace the carpet, go take them to court if they don't pay, do whatever you got to do to collect the money, and as soon as you get it, send it up to me. And he is sitting there waiting on you to send it up to him. You do all the work. We did all the work. We did all the work dealing with tenants, dealing with evictions, dealing with everything you have to deal with as a landlord. And in the end, you collect the money, and the bulk of it, if not all of it, goes to Mr. Burns. And he's sitting there waiting, run along. And that's why I say that I believe that whole model was invented by the banks. Because how genius is that? If you were a bank CEO and you were like, well, how can we get these people to work for us where we don't have any of the risk and we don't have to do any of the work? And someone says, I got it. Make them think they own it. They'll do all the work and they send us the money. And that's exactly what most people do. So what is a slow flip? Slow flip is a process of flipping a property as slowly as possible for the fastest possible path to wealth. And when I say the fastest path to wealth, I don't mean the fastest path to a check. In my opinion, I love wholesaling. So in my opinion, if you were just trying to get a check, wholesaling is, in my opinion, the fastest way to a check. Faster than rehabbing, faster than pretty much anything else. Wholesaling is awesome. Wholesaling would be your fastest path to a check, but slow flips are the fastest path to wealth. And by wealth, my version of wealth is when you have more money coming in each month than you have going out. When you can work or not work, your number, whatever it may be, it might be 10 grand, it might be 20 grand a month, whatever that number can be achieved in 5 to 7 years with slow flips. I think you're wealthy when you have 10 grand coming in and you have 8 grand worth of bills and you can be like, you know what, I'm just going to stay at home. Or you have 30 grand coming in and you have 20 grand worth of bills, or whatever the number may be. As long as you have more coming in than you have going out, that's when you're wealthy. You can live life on your terms, do whatever it is you want. And so that's why I always try and stress, because people like to argue, that's not the fastest wholesale. Yes, wholesaling's fastest to a check. Slow flips are the fastest path to wealth. So some people like to rehab the properties and sell with long-term owner financing or lease options. I personally do everything as is. I have not renovated a house since 2013. And I know I'm off topic, but I can tell you in 2013, I did my first extended trip for 30 days to Panama. And when you go away for 30 days, you have a lot of time to think. And back then I was still rehabbing. I still had houses, new construction houses going on. I had all kinds of stuff going on. And I had a lot of time to think while we were in Panama. And one of the things I realized is I do not have employees that work for me. I work for my employees. I was doing deals to keep everybody employed. Everybody's like, well, why are you doing that deal? I said, well, if I don't have a deal for him, he's going to find someone else to work for. I got great crews, so I would do deals just to keep them employed. I had guys that I would buy houses that weren't the best, but they were my buyers at the time. And I was like, well, but he did all this work. I want him to get a commission, even if it's going to be a skinny deal. So I was saying yes to stuff to keep everybody else employed. And then while I was gone, not only was everybody not doing everything they were supposed to be doing, I realized I work for my employees. And I got home, this was 2013. I left June 15th, 2013. I got home July 15th of 2013. And on July 16th, I got rid of everybody. And I've worked by myself ever since. I don't have a business. Everybody, you can scale and run a business. I don't have one of those. I don't have employees. I don't have anything going on. I have 178 houses. I don't have anybody managing them because there's no management. They're slow flips. So I ended that all in 2013, and I'm very thankful for it. I have a lot of friends that do the opposite. And if you're good at it, the opposite is really good. If you can run a business and you're good at it and having people do everything, then that's fantastic. I was never good at it. I was not the guy to have a bunch of employees and people working. I was working for them, so I ended that. So I do everything as is. I don't do any more rentals. Now, normally I would say, especially when I'm in Virginia, when I share these numbers, they might knock your socks off and think that houses like this don't exist. But in the market that we are in now, they do exist. So it's something you can wrap your head around. So on average, we buy houses for $30,000, $30,000 or below. Now, in certain markets, we do $50,000 because the monthly income comes in so much higher. We use private lenders. I have not used the bank since 2007. We use private lenders for every single deal. So we borrow the money at 12% interest, amortized for 5 years. So there was a time when everybody thought 12% was crazy high when rates were 2 and 3%. They're like, why aren't you? Now the lenders are like, are you going to raise the rate now that rates are up? I'm like, no, we didn't lower them when the rates went down. We're not raising them now. We still borrow them at 12% amortized. We borrow the full $30,000 on them. That makes the payment come out to $667.33. $667.33, but it's amortized, which means in 60 payments, it's free and clear. Not 30 years, 60 payments. 5 years, it's free and clear. What happened back when I was talking about, when I started thinking about the same house that I bought, is I needed to buy that house. I knew, I renovated it. I knew what it was, that house that got foreclosed on of mine and was for sale for 30 grand, but I didn't have the money. And I remember thinking hard money lenders won't loan on it because they don't like to do 5 years. They want it, generally they're 6 months or 12 months depending on the lender. And banks won't loan on it. My credit was shot at the time anyway. I had private lenders who would do it, but they didn't want to do the amortization thing. So it took some doing, which is why I ended up raising my interest rate at the time. But I wanted to come up with the shortest possible time to get it paid off. The maximum I can pay, which was 30 grand at the time, and the shortest amount of months. And I started thinking about cars. I'm like, we buy a car for $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 and they give you a 5-year loan. I buy a house and they want to give me a 30-year loan. And I would say, why is that? I know why it is. It's Mr. Burns. But other than Mr. Burns, there is no reason why, when you're buying a house of that price, you should be paying for 30 years. So we amortize them for 5 years. Our payment comes out to $667.33 plus taxes and insurance. We sell them immediately, anywhere from $69,000 to $99,000. The average is $89,000. Sometimes we have them significantly higher. I have them in all price ranges all the way up to $875,000. But we sell them on average for $89,000 immediately. We don't renovate them. We don't do any work to them. We typically get $3,000 to $5,000 down. Now, in some markets, we get $2,000 down just because that's what the market will bear. In some markets, we get more than the $5,000, but the average is $3,000 to $5,000 down. The average monthly payment is $875 a month. So with $875 a month, you don't make any money. That's it. The payment is $667, plus we work in the taxes and insurance. So you don't make any money, but you have 60 months of not making money, and then you're free. Then it's all yours. And so there's a saying that I repeat often within my group, which is, if you do what's hard, life will be easy. And if you do what's easy, life will be hard. And this is hard. You're agreeing to do something now for 5 years without getting paid. But if you suck it up for 5 years, you can be free for the rest of your life. And so, I work with people, and I have some people that have been with me over 5 years now, and they've already passed that point where every month there's another 1 or 2 coming free and clear, and everything changes. During those first 5 years, and I remember my first 5 years, I kept thinking, am I doing the right thing? Is this worth it? I'm doing all this work and I'm not making any money now, right? But then when we hit 2016, I started doing this model in 2011. When we hit 2016, all of a sudden I felt like a genius, because now they were free and clear, and more free and clear, and more free and clear, and more free and clear. And I live a very abundant life now, but it's not from work I'm doing. It is from work I've done in the past. And it's because it's 60 short months. Now, when you get paid your $875, it is for 30 years. When we sell, we don't sell on a 5-year mortgage. We sell on a full 30-year term, just like the banks would do. We sell on a full 30-year term. So it changes everything. So on average, after everything is said and done, we only make $500 a month. Now, I don't know your price points that you guys work in. A lot of people are like, oh, it's only $500. It's not worth it. You can do higher price points. On average, we make $500 a month after taxes and insurance, plus you leave some cushion in there. $500 a month per month once it's free and clear. However, there's abundant properties. You don't use any money to buy them. It's just a matter of if you're willing to wait out 5 years. That's all. So $875 is what they're paying you for your $30,000 house. You guys know what that is over a course of 30 years? It is a lot of money. It is $315,000 they end up paying you for your little $30,000 house that you didn't pay anything for because you used a private lender and you paid it off in the first 5 years. If you guys have mortgages on your own homes, which I'm sure you do, or rentals or whatever, and you happen to look at them, the amortization schedule, it is sickening. The way an amortization schedule works is sickening. However, when you're on the receiving side of an amortization schedule, it's kind of awesome. So I have one house now that's sub 2 that I bought in 2001. We still have a mortgage on it. I only bought it for $60,000. I've been paying on it since 2001, and I looked at the statement the other day, and we owe $40,000 on it. And I was like, why didn't we just pay this off? Because I never even look at those. And I was like, we've been paying on this for so long, and I hate the amortization schedule if you're on the paying side of it. When you're on the receiving side of it, it is phenomenal. So for those of you who haven't looked, on $89,000, an $875 payment, when you make your first payment, $32 goes to principal. The rest is interest. But to take it a step further, 10 years later, on month 120, they borrowed $89,000. They've been paying $875 a month for 10 years. They still owe you $81,000. That's the beauty of an amortization schedule when you're on the receiving side. When you're on the paying side, it is absolutely awful. I cannot stand if you have a mortgage, if you're not giving extra to it, because it is absolutely awful if you're on the paying side of it. On the receiving side, it's almost glorious. You're like, oh my God, it's all interest. It's a small dollar house that turns into huge dollars. So I say remember your number even though we didn't do this exercise, and that number is your freedom number, whatever your lifestyle expenses are. It could be 10 grand a month, 5 grand a month, 15 grand a month, whatever it is. We take that number, divide it by 500, that's the average that we end up getting, and that is the number of slow flips that you need for freedom. It's a really simple formula. For instance, if your number was $10,000 a month and that was enough to make you free, not rich, not buying a yacht or a Lamborghini, just enough to pay all your bills so you can work or not work, if your number was $10,000, you would only need 20 slow flips. 20, which you can do in a year. You're not going to make any money, and now you're going to spend the next 5 years, if you didn't grow and you didn't want to do more than you needed, you'd spend just servicing and taking care of your people and collecting the payments and paying your private lender, and then at the end of those 60 months, that money's yours. It's, you know, sometimes people ask me about real estate, and I sometimes jokingly say, I said, I'm not in real estate, I'm in finance. And I say that to people because I'm like, no, it's really the house. It's not so much about the house as it is the note in the paper. It's really finance. It's not so much about the house. Believe me, some of the houses people look at and they're like, what, would you buy that? And I'm like, well, look at how much we're making from it. And when you do the math, I'm like, well, it's a 60% return. On average, our bad deals, our worst deals, our bad deals are a 20% return. 20% return are our bad deals. We have deals we're getting 30, 40% returns, our returns for the purchase price versus what we sell it for and get in monthly. They're huge numbers on such a small deal. So automate. I have 178 houses. I don't have any staff. I don't work with anybody. A couple different things we do. We use horrible, ugly, misspelled, handwritten signs. Why do we do that? I'm going to tell you a funny story. Years ago, when I was doing them myself, I don't anymore because now I have a big group, so people in the group fill properties for everybody else in the group, and they split the down payment. But when I was doing it myself, I have absolutely awful handwriting. I signed someone's book, and I told you that when I signed it. I said my handwriting is absolutely awful. Well, I went to a house where I wasn't sure if the person moved out. Went there. It was out. They were out. I saw it. The locksmith changed the locks. I had keys put on a lockbox. And before I left, I had signs in my trunk. So I said, well, I might as well stick up some signs while I was here. Normally, I would have someone else write the signs because my handwriting's so bad. Well, I was there anyway, so I wrote them myself. I wrote the signs myself. I put a bunch around the neighborhood. And my phone rang off the hook. And it was like, man, this house is popular. Why is this house so popular? I'm like, this is not a great house, not a great neighborhood. The house, it was crazy. Well, I filled the house the next day, and I went back over there, and I picked up my signs. I put the signs in my office. Didn't think twice about it. About a week or two later, a guy was in my office, and he says, what's a CHEP house? C-H-E-P. I said, what are you talking about? He says, CHEP house. What's a CHEP house? And I was like, oh, I'm an idiot. I spelt it. I actually spelt it C-H-E-P. It was not on purpose. I was just writing real fast, and it was meant to write cheap house, and it said CHEP house. Well, anyway, it started to make me think. I was like, I wonder if that is why these people will call in like crazy for this house. And so I test everything. And so I started testing. Nice signs, crappy signs, nice signs, crappy signs. And the crappy signs outperform more than 10 to 1. However, depends on what you're doing. If you're doing a slow flip, that's good. If you're doing a conventional rental, that's not good. You don't want those people. The reason they're calling 10 to 1 is because they know they won't qualify The pretty sign, they know they're going to get charged a $50 application fee, and then they know they're going to be denied. So they don't bother calling the nice looking sign. When they see my sign, what do they think? There's a guy I can work with, right? And so depending on what you're doing, you don't want to use that. If you're selling a house, you wouldn't use crappy signs. If you were doing regular rentals, you wouldn't use crappy signs. But for slow flips, more than 10-to-1 response rate on these signs, because the market says this is someone I can work with, and that's what we're looking for. So we use crappy signs. We have a service now. We do it through my Deal Factory. It was called Deal by Text, which was what it would do is it would capture every single person's number that came through that called you, whether they bought or not. It would capture their number, and then when you had your next property, you would just send one text and it went to everybody saying new property with your information. So it made it really streamlined and easy. The showing system, how we do this without actually, we're in multiple states, right? Without ever actually going and seeing these houses, showing them. I never even saw them in my own state. And again, when I tell people the showing system, a lot of times people are like, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, we've been doing it for a long time, and that's what we do. So first of all, we put the house on a lockbox as soon as we get it. We make sure I will not talk to a person unless they've already driven by the house. And the reason for that is, as you guys know, if you've ever had a house listed or marketed anywhere, people say, oh yeah, I want to come see it at noon. And even if they do show up, which is a rarity, if they do show up, as soon as they pull up, half of them will say, oh, I didn't know the neighborhood was like this. I don't want to live here. Thanks anyway. That could all be solved if you drive by the house before we ever said anything or talk anything. So I make sure before I even talk to them, it's in the message. They have to drive by. I tell them, feel free to look in the windows. We'll talk about that in a second. I tell them to call me in an hour in advance before they're ready to come see it, and I will come out and meet them and open the door for them. I say if I'm not able to make it, I have a neighbor with a key who'll come open up the door for you. So I tell them that every time. I never tell them anything other than that. Give me an hour in advance. The reason I do that is so I make sure I'm going to be looking at my phone. Like right now, I'm obviously not looking at my phone, so I wouldn't want someone to be sitting at a house waiting on me and I'm not going to show up, right? So I tell them to give me notice an hour in advance. So if I knew then I couldn't make it, I would let them know that wasn't going to work. When they call, I tell them the exact same thing, and then I wait for their call. So when they call, they say, okay, I'm free and I'm going to leave now. I can be there in an hour. I say, fine, I'll be there. I'll see you in an hour. But if I can't make it, my neighbor next door has a key and they'll open up the door for you. When they arrive, they're going to call me when they get there, and I'm going to say, my neighbor just stepped out, but because you're already there, I don't want you to come out there for nothing, so I'm going to go ahead and give you the lockbox code, let you let yourself in, take a walk around. When you leave, put the key back in the box, spin the dial, and give me a call, and we can go over it. I stay on the phone with them until they open the lockbox. The code is 2008. I've been using that same code on all my houses since 2008, and I've never had the slightest issue. Everybody's like, you can't do that. I'm like, guess what? I do. I've been using the same code since 2008, and I let them let themselves in, walk around. I walk through how to do it, push the tab down on the thing, the front of the box will fall open the door, put the key back in the box, spin the dial, take your time, and then I say, well, if the neighbor comes back, just let them know Scott said it was okay. Keep in mind, there is no neighbor. I just say that so that they don't think, oh, he's letting me let in. Let's bring a truck and we can take some appliances. I have never lost anything. Nobody's ever broken in, stolen anything, or done anything. I'm well aware it can happen any given day, and I'm okay with it. The reason I'm okay with it is because I have saved thousands of hours. If somebody wants to steal my crappy $500 fridge for 1,000 hours of my life, they can have the fridge. Simple as that. Everybody's like, you can't do it. They're going to do this. And I'm like, listen, it hasn't happened yet. I'm well aware it can happen tomorrow. I'm not worried about it. I'm okay with it, and I look forward to it. So what about the condition? This is the first thing that's going to pop into people's heads. They're going to say, but these $30,000 houses need work, right? They're deplorable. Some of them are. Some of them are nice. You guys live in a market where I look at houses in most markets, and here's one of them. There's some houses here that are actually really nice in that price range. When I buy a house in my market anymore, since COVID, they skyrocketed in my market. That's why we buy remotely now. I buy a lot in Missouri and Illinois. They skyrocketed in my market. I still get them occasionally, but if I'm buying one in my market for our prices, it's really deplorable. But I bought plenty of deplorable properties. So what about the condition? My answer is always the same, and that is, you're lucky. And what I mean by that, when somebody looks at the house and they call me and they say, oh, we like it, but what about there's no toilet in the bathroom? Or what about all those cereal boxes all over the floor? And what about there's dog poop in the other room? And I tell them, you're lucky. You're lucky we didn't send somebody yet, because once we do, the payment won't be $5,000 down, it'll probably be $10,000 down, and I'm sure you can get it done for much less than that. You're lucky we didn't trim the shrubs, because right now it's only $3,000 down, and our guy's probably going to charge $1,500, but you could probably get it done for $100. I always tell them, you're lucky we didn't do anything yet, so you're lucky you got it before the work was done because you're going to get a much lower down payment. They always end the same with, no, don't do it. My son can do that, or my husband has a company doing that, or don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. Well, you're right, you'll take care of it because I'm not going to. We don't do any work to any houses. I haven't done any work to any house since 2013, no matter what happens. I've had houses, just to give you a story, this is like when I'll take questions from you after, but one of the worst case scenarios, people always say, what's the worst thing that's ever happened, right? Well, I had a house one time that somebody moved into to renovate. They gutted it down to the studs and then defaulted. So when I got the house back, I opened the door and I was like, oh crap, there's nothing. Like I always, as a rule, we try and buy what we call somewhat livable, meaning it's livable, it just needs cleanup, needs paint, carpet, maybe a toilet fix up, but they're somewhat livable. This one was studs, and I was like, oh crap, what am I gonna do now? Put up signs, I changed it from, cheap house to contractor special, got a contractor who was happy he didn't have to have hard money, maybe he didn't qualify for whatever reason, so he was able to buy the house, renovate it, and turn around and resell it. What houses that for me was the biggest disaster ended up being the ones I got paid off on because they were flipping them and not keeping them as rentals. So my answer is always you're lucky on the condition. This is one I had. This is a house I paid $16,000 for in 2011. And I remember when I bought it, it was my first time dabbling into bad houses, right? That was a section of town I would never go during the boom. We can't buy there, we can't buy there. And then I started seeing them on MLS for 10 grand, 16 grand, 30 grand. And I'm like, these houses were just 150 grand a couple months ago. And so I went out there and looked at it and I ended up buying it. I still have this house to this day. I get $1175 on it. So think about that math. It's not the first person in it, mind you. I think I'm on my third person in it, but this one will be there forever because they've renovated it. I get $1175 a month on a house I paid $16,000 for. And that was in 2011. So the returns on them are just phenomenal. So this house was filled with newspapers. Apparently the person who was there was like running a newspaper scam where they were getting paid for delivering but not delivering them, just piling them up inside the house. And every room was just filled with newspapers. There's a beer one. So this one, I want to show you this one. I have a short video on it. I don't know if the sound will come through, not that it matters. So I bought a package of houses, of 24 houses for $21,000 each. And I was a little lazy and I didn't do all my due diligence properly. I knew the guy who was selling them. I knew the area. I drove by most of them. Well, then I'm in the Bahamas and I sent a guy by to go do pictures and video on the vacant ones and start marketing them. So I'm in the Bahamas and he calls me and he says, did you know this house had a fire? And I'm like, no, what? And he's like, yeah, there's a fire, it's boarded up, and there was a fire. And I was pissed because I knew the guy who sold them to me. And he obviously knew because it was boarded up. It wasn't like it just happened. Well, anyway, so I said, well, stick up signs anyway and, do what we do. And it's sold to a contractor. He sent me pictures all along the way with all new windows, ductwork, everything, flooring, air conditioning, and he ended up reselling it. I sold it to him cheap. We normally do $89,000. I think I sold it to him for $59,000, but he ended up selling it for $225,000 after he renovated it, so he put a lot of money into it, but ended up selling it for $225,000. But I think that's right. He told me I have to do the. I don't know how to do this technology. I have to press the button. Hang on. I don't know about this Brian guy. I don't know. I can't see small. Up there it goes. So anyway, you can't see or hear. The reason you can't see is because it's all black walls because there was a fire in that house. And if you can hear my guy walking around, he's doing a video, like literally talking about the house like a real estate agent would. He's like, well, this is nice over here, and you just got to clean this up. Meanwhile, this is a burned out house. And when you listen to the sound, now we don't have sound on, you would die laughing because he's like, well, it's not that bad. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not that bad. The house is deplorable. And we sold it exactly in this condition. He put up signs when he was leaving, and we sold it to a contractor who buys multiple houses from us, and he renovates them and resells them. So people ask all the time, they're like, well, who would buy these houses? Why would someone buy this? And I think about it from the contractor's perspective. He doesn't have the ability to use bank money, hard money, and so this is an opportunity for him. He pays a little bit more. Basically, it's almost like he used hard money, but it was built in to the purchase price. He pays a little bit more. He has to make a monthly payment in between, but he gets to renovate it. He has his own crews. This guy has a construction company, so he's got his own crews. Then he puts it on the market and resells it, and he makes a bunch of money. And one of my things I'm constantly teaching my people is don't count the money in another man's pocket. A lot of people get mad when they find out somebody else made money on their deal. I'm like, no, you made what you agreed to make. Let them make what they agreed to make. I want my people to make money. I love when my people make money, and they make a lot of money. Sometimes I am shocked by the dollar amounts that they get. But that's good. Look at what I paid 20 and sold it for 80. They might have ended up selling it for 2 1/4, but that's their business. That's not my business, right? I want them to make money. The more money they make, the more money we make. So this next one, although I might need Brian again to hit the play button, since I don't know how to do it. Oh, it's not even clicking now. I don't know, Brian. Your technology's not the greatest. I know, that's the whole thing. It's Apple, and I sent it to them in a normal person's computer. Well, I'm trying. There we go. Well, now you still got to hit play. Whoa, you still got to hit play. Still got to hit play. No, you're already over here. So anyway, so this house is a typical house. So this one is in Newport News, and this was a $20,000 house that I purchased. And the sound again isn't working because our AV guy is not the greatest. But I can tell you about the house. So this was a house that was in a local real estate group thread that was just going on. Everybody lists their houses that are available. Mind you, this is a few years now. So this was, I want to say it was 2018. I say it in the video, but we don't have any sound. But I think it was 2018. And it was literally getting passed around every single day, and nobody was buying it. And I happened to be in the neighborhood. I just assumed it would be gone. And I responded and asked him, I said, is that house still available? He was only asking $20,000 for it. I didn't negotiate with him, and I paid the full 20 for it. So we always borrow. I know we're not talking about private lending today, although I will if you guys have questions. We always borrow $30,000 on every deal. So even if I buy it for 20, we borrow 30. If I buy it for 40, we borrow 30. We borrow 30 on every deal. The reason we do that is so that we have when we do a private money training, the purpose of it is so that we have a program, so that we are telling the lenders what the program is. We borrow $30,000 at 12% for 60 months. The payment's $667.33. So we have a program. When you borrow different amounts for each property with slow flips, what happens is every now and then you get a smoking good deal. And then the lender will loan you 20 grand on that smoking good deal, and then your next one is an average deal that's a normal average 30, and the lender's going to say, no, I want one like that other one. And so we try to make them all the same regardless. Even if I pay 40, we'll bring money. If I pay 20, we get money, but we make it a flat 30,000 on every single deal. It's a consistent. So on this one, I ended up walking away after closing costs and everything. I got the house basically for free. I paid 20, borrowed 30, walked away after closing costs with about $7,000. And then immediately, it was about a day or two, we put a guy in it who's renovating it. He put $3,000 down and $875 a month, and he's completely renovated. So that's the condition of the property. And the next video, you'll see, I sent my guy to pick up the lockbox, and he happened to be there. So he asked, would you mind if I video it? And so he let him video if Brian would be so kind to press play on the next one. I don't know how to do it. I'm hitting the button. So I got $7,000 the day of closing, got an extra $3,000 a day or two after closing, which is $10,000, and then $875 a month, my payment's $667. So we didn't make any money on it for the first 5 years. That's the way the program goes. Yep. And so this is that same house, but this was a couple weeks later when I sent my guy to pick up the lockbox, and so the guy happened to be there working on it, so you can see into it what he did. And whenever I see it, and when you see it, I always am thinking in my head, this is $20,000. This is a Honda Accord. And it is just he completely renovated. He's still there. Now there's all kinds of stuff. He's got trucks in the driveway that cost more than the house, more than it's even worth now. This is a contractor. He's got a bunch of houses from us now. This was the first one. And I love the fact that when I look at it, it's their money. It's their house. We are basically in the finance business. The reality is they have the personal attachment to the house. I don't. It's their house. It's their property. And that's the way I want it to be. I always try and tell people, they're like, yeah, but what if this and what if that? I said, no. Our value is the paperwork. Their value is the house. Even though the deed stays in our name, it's their property. It's their pride and joy. It's not ours. They're the ones who are taking care of it, doing all the work to it, and getting the value out of it. When it goes up in value, they're the ones getting that equity. But don't worry about, you're giving up equity. Remember, it was $300, $3,600 a year you would be paying in maintenance on it. Do that over the 10 years that they got it, and you made up your equity the day you bought it. You do okay. Don't worry about what someone else gets. That's why I'm always saying, don't count the money in another man's pocket. They will make money. I want them to make money. The more they make money, the more houses they want to buy from you. So I have people that have 12, 13 houses from me. I don't, including this guy. I think he's got 6 or 8 from us. And actually I think you can see him out here. He was painting. And I love the fact that it's people are always like, oh no, these deals are predatory and all these negative stuff they want to say in the news. And I'm like, we are win, 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 win. Our lender is winning, our seller is winning, we are winning, our buyer is winning. Every single person in the transaction is winning. The only people who see it as not a win are people who are not involved in the transaction, looking at it from an outside perspective and saying, well, how could you make that money when you didn't do anything? Those are the people who complain, people that have nothing to do with the deal. Yet the guy who's in the deal, he's like, no, I'm perfectly happy with the deal. Everyone involved in the deal is happy with it. It's only a third party who's not involved in the deal who they'll say, oh no, if you just bought it for 20 and sold it for 89, then you're taking advantage. Those are the only people who say anything. Anybody in the transaction, everybody's happy with the deals. This is my technology guy. And you want to be my latex salesman? All right. So we use a master land contract. Now, it's different in every state, and Alabama being one of them, from the best of my knowledge, in Alabama, you have to foreclose. So in Alabama, I don't even know if you would use a land contract so much as do an actual owner finance. I can't speak that with certainty, but I am 90% sure. Carl, you would probably know. You do a contract for deed out here. So we use a master land contract. In most areas, I tell people to check with your local attorney just to make sure everything is customized for your market. But all that's in it is going to be the terms of the agreement. The way I explain it to my buyer is I tell them, when you buy a house from a bank, the deed goes in your name and then you pay for 30 years. When you buy a house from me, you pay for 30 years and then the deed goes in your name. It's the same end result, the exact same end result. We have them sign what I call a compliance sheet, which is basically just the important parts in the contract. I have my initial next to each line. Now, this is not some legal document. I do it for clarity so that somebody doesn't say a week or a month or 6 months later, you didn't tell me I was responsible for repairs. You didn't tell me that the plumbing didn't work, whatever, because it says in this document that we've never seen the house, we've done no inspections, we don't know anything about the house. It says, I understand I am responsible for all repairs from this day forward. I do that just so it's on one line so nobody can say it was buried into the contract and I didn't see that part. No, you're initialing right next to that sentence so that there is no confusion. So one big tip I try and stress with my people is to remember that your buyers are your customers. They're your clients. They are not adversaries. We try and do things. If you guys have ever learned lease options from several different people or learned land contracts even, there are a lot of people in the industry who are trying to find the right words because a lot of them are friends of mine, but it's not the most scrupulous business, right? They set them up to fail. I know people that they like, oh, we do a 2-year lease option or a 3-year lease option. And it's almost like the way I look at it, and it's not a scam by any means, but I'm like, well, if you can't qualify today, the odds of you qualifying in 12 months are slim to none, right? And so I don't ever like putting people in that situation. And so I try to remember we want to make a ton of money. We're in business to make money. That's not a secret. I'm not trying to hide that we make a lot of money, right? But we want to do it by them succeeding in the deal. That is really where the business comes together. When they succeed in the deal, we have people that their family, their sisters have houses from us, their mother comes and gets a house from us. The whole family ends up, as they move down, getting houses from us because they love us, because we take care of them. And by taking care of them, I mean I tell them, I said, if you pay on time, you're never going to hear from us again, ever. That's why everybody asks, how do I have 178 properties without a staff? I'm like, because all we do is take them out of the P.O. box, and most of them come online and deposit them. That's it. There is no maintenance. There's no work involved. There was work. There's a lot more work at certain times than others, and I'll tell you, we call them lifers. The challenge is we do no credit check. I do everything on a first-come, first-served basis. The same way, and that's why I was sharing with you non-qualifying assumptions. When I started, I was buying non-qualifying assumptions. I had bad credit, and I had no job, and I had very little money. I would not have qualified for anything, right? But yet I was able to buy my first 20 houses through non-qualifying assumptions. So I always felt, who am I now to tell somebody else they're not qualified to buy my house? I'm like, nobody qualified me when I bought them. And so a lot of people are like, you can't do that. You got to check people's credit. I'm like, okay, well, you check it. I do first come, first serve, first person that puts the money down. However, because of that, you do get some turnover. Now, you don't have to do it. Some people in my group actually do. They do credit checks, and they do all kinds of income checks, and that's up to you. I do no credit checks. I do first come, first serve. I do it for another reason too, compliance. Now, I'm not a great detail-oriented person. I'm not great in keeping my paperwork together and keeping files for 10 years after the fact. But a lot of people don't know exactly the way the law works, which I learned without knowing the way it works either, and that's discrimination. I thought if 5 people came in to apply, and I looked at all 5 applications, that I could pick the best one and take that person. That makes common sense to me. 5 people applied, 1 is more qualified than the rest, I should be allowed to take that person. However, I learned the law doesn't work that way. The law says you have to set your minimum acceptable criteria, and the first person to meet your minimal acceptable criteria is the one that you have to give it to. Otherwise, it's discrimination, and I didn't know that. And so after that, I was like, so you mean I got to keep all these applications, and I got to keep, and I said, I'm just first come, first serve, and so nobody can ever say discrimination on me because the first person to put the money in my hand is the one who gets it. Now, with that said, there is turnover, because sometimes when you do first come, first serve, you get people who have no intentions of paying, or they're just trying to skirt a credit check, or whatever it's going to be. They're going to come in, they're going to be there for 3 months, and they're going to leave. Well, that happens, and that's unfortunate, but that's part of the business. However, we have what we call lifers, and those are the people who take it serious and are staying then forever, either as a lot of them rent them, especially my ones out west, they're mostly Section 8 landlords who buy them from us. Our lifers then renovate it, take it seriously, it's their home. Well, once we get our lifer, we never see the house again. Before we get our lifer, that's when it might turn over in a year, it might turn over in 2 years, it might turn over in 6 months. Before you get your lifer, there's more work involved. So I have a ton of properties right now, and I have pretty much every single one of them is on the lifer stage. But that's not normal for somebody who's getting started. Somebody who's getting started, you're going to have turnover. That's just the way it is. I've had houses turn over 3 times in 1 year. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst house I've ever had. And then the next guy moves in, and I never see the house again. And that's the way it goes until we get our lifer. So a couple questions you haven't asked, but I just want to address them. Who would buy these? Why would somebody buy a house for $89,000 if they are readily available for $25,000 and $35,000? That doesn't make any sense. Who would buy them, right? The person who would buy them is going to be somebody who needs what we're offering, which is no credit check, seller will finance. I always tell people we sell the financing, the house comes with it. What we're really selling is the financing. What if they have great credit? Guess what? The banks don't even want to loan on these low-dollar houses. Most banks, and I can't speak for every area and every bank, but most banks have a minimum of $50,000 before they'll do a mortgage on a house. And a house is listed for $25,000. They can't even buy it with a bank. So sometimes they could be sitting in my office and they could say, well, it's 89. There's one on the block for sale for 40. How's this one 89? And I say, you saw one for 40. That's a much better deal. I would buy that one if I was you. And they say, well, I can't buy that one because that one you got to pay cash. I'm like, well, then I would buy mine. That's it. I just brutally honest with them. Yes, if you found a better deal, I would buy the better deal. Why wouldn't you? However, they're buying ours because of the financing. How do we justify the price? This is always an interesting question because people say, yeah, but it's only worth X. And my answer on worth is simple. Anything, not just a house, but anything on the planet is worth whatever someone's willing to pay for it. And so I tell them just that. I say, somebody is going to pay $89,000 for it, so it's worth $89,000. That somebody might not be you, but somebody is going to pay $89,000 for it. Oftentimes, if there's a woman there, I'll use a handbag, and I'll say, you can buy a handbag at Walmart for $25, or you can buy a handbag at Louis Vuitton for $8,000. Is it worth $8,000? Well, because people still pay it, it's worth it. Somebody's paying it, so they can sell it for $8,000. What makes it worth $8,000? The fact that somebody will still pay for it. Well, that's why our houses are worth $89, because they keep selling. They're generally sold, depending on the market. In my market, they're gone in a day. Out west, sometimes they take 2, 3, 4 weeks. I always tell people to prepare for 3 months just to be safe, but they take, different markets take a little bit longer to fill, but they all fill. What happens if everyone buys you out? This is an interesting question because a friend of mine who's in Virginia, he has a bunch of houses. His are rentals. He hates his rentals, but he won't convert to slow flips because he's afraid. He said, and this is his exact words one day, he said, well, with my luck, they'll all buy them. And I'm like, did you hear what you said? With your luck, they'll all buy them at super retail. I call our price super retail, right? Because we don't have PICRA, we don't have repairs, we don't have agent commissions, we don't have any closing costs. I said, you're right. You would be really lucky because now you would take that money and go double the amount of houses you have. But in his head, if he lost his houses because he had pride in his houses, I picked out that light, I picked out that door color. So if you have pride in the house and it's like your baby, you're not going to like this because once you do it, it's not your house anymore. It's their house, right? And so people that love their house and they want to go hug the door, this wouldn't be for you because it's going to be somebody else hugging the door. It's not going to be you anymore. So if everybody buys you out, that's actually a really good thing, and you're going to take that money, you're going to go buy twice as many houses. if not 3 times as many. I have 3 right now that are in the process. 2, I think, happened while I was gone that closed, that people are buying me out. And I'm not getting huge amounts because they were there for a while, but I'll probably be walking away with 60, 70,000 on each of them. And they're worth more now because, again, they've been there a while and the values have gone up. But I immediately will take that money, and with each one, I'll buy 2 or 3 more. And so I don't mind if they buy me out. How do you qualify the buyer? I already told you that. We first come, first serve. I do not qualify them. I know some people in my group do qualify, and that's up to them. What I have found in my 30 years is that even when I qualify, I still have people default. You know, and everybody who says, oh, well, you don't qualify them, so you're going to end up with foreclosures. I said, well, go look at the newspaper right now. All the foreclosures, those people qualified, right? They all have mortgages from banks. They all qualified, and yet they're all in foreclosure. So, yes, that's just part of life. It's going to happen regardless. What happens if they don't pay? Now, this varies from state to state. In most of the states where I am, it's a straight-up regular eviction, just like you would do as a tenant. In some states, they make you go through a foreclosure process. Some states, it's a hybrid. If they pay down 20% of the original balance, then you have to foreclose. That, in most amortization schedules, that's going to take 11 years. So if they're with you for 11 years and then they defaulted, yes, you would have to go through a foreclosure process. But in most states that we're in, it's just a regular simple eviction, same as if you had a tenant not paying. 6 weeks, not the end of the world. What if they trash the house? This is a good question because they do. Sometimes you'll get a house back and you're going to be like, oh my God, look at what they did to the house. Now I'm going to tell you something that most people don't think is more often when someone leaves, the house is better than we gave it to them, which is very rare and crazy in the regular world, because in the regular world, you already fixed it up before you put the person in. So you're getting it back in significantly worse condition than they got it. But with slow flips, work has to be done. And so they typically get, when they give them back, they're typically back in better condition than they got it. I've had houses with new additions on that I've had to watch the old video to say, I thought this was a 2-bedroom. And I watched my video and I'm like, this was a 2-bedroom. That was not there. And they literally put additions on the house. And so, you know, when they trash the house, it happens. I don't fix them back up. I don't clean them out. When they're trashed, I sell them exactly the way that person trashed it and left it that way. My new buyer buys it that way. It's interesting, from a buyer's perspective, they actually can see why they're getting this deal better when the house is trashed. It doesn't make any sense to me, but I've had houses that are pristine and I can't sell them. And I wonder, and I'm like, why is nobody buying this? Because it's better than all the others, yet it's the one sitting, and the one that's filled with trash, they're selling. I've even joked with a friend of mine. I said, I'm going to go over and kick holes in the walls. I said, because I don't know why it's not selling. And I realized it's their brain, because when the house was perfect, they feel like there's something going on here. Why am I getting this opportunity? There's something I'm not seeing. When a house is trashed, they know why they're getting the opportunity. They're trading their elbow grease for the opportunity to be able to own a home. When the house is perfect, they feel like there's some scam going on here, because why am I getting blessed? I've literally, I joked with a friend, I never did it, but I was like, I'm going to go kick holes in all the walls because it wasn't moving and it was the only one that was perfect. Who pays the taxes? So I used to let them pay their own. Can you guess what happened? So lessons learned the hard way. Now I always make sure we have it in their payment, and I pay the taxes on all the properties. I will never again trust them to make their own tax payments. That was a mistake. So why pay them off? We're going to talk about it actually in just a second, but I am a born-again, debt-free guy. Because if you had talked to me during the 2000s, I would have sold you all day long on being in debt and leverage and the Burr method and all this beautiful stuff. I loved it wholeheartedly. I would leave meetings with guys, the older guys who had all their houses free and clear, and I would leave being like, man, if this guy knew what he was doing, he would make so much more money. And I felt like I was really smart. And then during the bust, these same guys were buying everything that got foreclosed on for pennies on the dollar, and they didn't have any stress, and we spent all kinds of stress during that time. That's why I pay them off. I am all in on free and clear, and I will never go back. There's all kinds of opportunity always, and I'm like, nope, there is zero chance I am going back into the debt world. And how does insurance work? So insurance is a complicated question, but I'm going to tell you, we have them pay for it. Now, in most of my states, I have them get their own policy, but, and this is where I say it's complicated and I don't want to get too deep into it, if I have a private lender on it, I still keep my own policy. And the reason I do that, it's a complete waste of money. If anybody here's in insurance, you guys know, they're only going to pay one claim. So you're wasting your money by having a second policy. The reason I do it is because every now and then the buyer will not pay their insurance policy on time. And guess what happens when they do? They send a letter, right? To let you know that your buyer didn't pay. Well, I don't want the private lender to be the one getting that letter. So I get a policy from my private lender strictly for the reason so they have peace of mind and they never receive a letter saying that the insurance policy is lapsing. That's it. I know it's stupid, but I just do it because I want my lenders to have 1,000% peace of mind. So until it's free and clear, I actually keep an extra policy on it, which is ridiculously stupid because they will only pay one claim anyway. But I do it just strictly to keep my lenders having peace of mind. I have the same lender since 2011, and all of my lenders, and I have a lot of lenders now, have all stemmed, and the way I teach private lending, it always works this way. I've stemmed off of my private lenders because I make it a seamless, stress-free process for them, and they loan money and they get paid on the first every month, and whether it's vacant or filled or anything's going on or whatever, they get paid on the first, and so people know people like themselves, right? So when they're talking about whatever they're investing in, they're like, no, I got a guy, I make 12% of my money, I get paid every month. And then finally they call and they're like, hey, do you need any more lenders? And all of my lenders have come through my original lenders because I do little stupid things, and I know it's stupid, cost me a couple $100s a year, but I just do it just to keep peace for my lenders so they don't have any problems. So paying off your rentals. Why on the heck would you pay off your rentals, right? Pay off your rentals, your slow flips, whatever they are, your houses, be debt free. So I like to go through a couple of different answers. If you were to ask your lawyer, are there any lawyers here? No? If you were to ask your lawyer, now if your lawyer is in real estate, you might get a different answer. But if you were to ask a regular lawyer, generally they will tell you, no, you don't want to pay him off. You'd be like, well, why not? And he says, well, because then you're going to be a magnet for lawsuits, right? Because a litigant can look and see you own the house free and clear and say, okay, well, it's worth suing them. There's something to get. Now, there are ways around that, like equity. There's a ton of different ways we're not going to get into, but that's what a lawyer would typically tell you is, no, you don't want to pay off your houses because you're going to be free and clear, and anybody can look that up and see you're suable. You have something to get. It's worth spending the money to sue you. What about your accountant? Look at that T down there. I don't know how that happened. But your accountant, Brian must have done that when I wasn't looking. So if you were to ask your accountant, and again, unless you have an accountant who's a real estate investor and is in a debt-free mindset, if you were to ask your accountant, 99 out of 100 times they're going to tell you, no, you don't want to do it. You're going to lose your biggest deduction, right? Your mortgage interest deduction. And they're right. You're going to lose the deduction. However, it never makes sense to me when people would rather pay interest to be able to deduct the interest and save 30% of what you paid. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. To pay $1 to save 30 cents. I'm like, why not just keep the $1? And yes, I have to pay out the 30 cents. So, because accountants have one job and one job only, and that's to save you money on taxes. And it will save you money on taxes by having more deductions. I would rather have more cash, and yes, I have to pay out the taxes. As much as I don't like to, I do. Now, what about your calculator? If you were to run the numbers with your calculator and do it both ways, this is the interesting thing. Your calculator has no vested interest, and it only knows facts, right? So your calculator is going to say, you'll make more money, the leverage model. Paying them off, don't pay them off, you'll make more money doing the leverage model. And he's right. He's right. Your calculator's right. You will make more money doing the leverage model. However, I always say that the calculator is missing a button, and that's the peace of mind button, right? There is peace of mind with having everything free and clear. So you will make more money doing the leverage model, but there's peace of mind with free and clear. So I always tell the Burr people, right, and I have conversations all the time. We'll call them debates, not arguments, but I always let them win, and I always say, no, you're right. Yeah, you're right. But really, the reality is, I always tell people, I said, it depends on the game you're playing. If you are playing the game to die with the most money, then the Burr method is for you. If you are playing the game to live the best life, then slow flips are for you. And that's it, because I'm like, you're right, the Burr method works and you will make more money. I was reading some guy's post just today who was talking about, I sold this house, I paid off this first house and I regret it so much, I could have bought X amount more houses. The guy has like 300 houses, so I'm like, so what, you'd have 304? Ooh, that's going to change your life, right? But whatever, that's the mindset, is what way makes you more money? And I've tried to get out of that mindset. I don't want to just say, what can we make the most money with? What can we have the best life with, right? And so that's kind of where I'm at with that. I know there's a lot of debate going on with these questions of paying them off, because it doesn't make sense. We've all been trained over and over again for leverage the entire time. So I have one guy in my class who has more houses than I do now. He's got, and you might even know, Carl, I think he's got 180 or 185 now. I have 178. He's only been doing it 5 years. And so I had him come into the office, and we filmed literally everything. And I did it for my group, but I'm giving it to you guys today, where I basically went through everything. How are you finding them? How are you filling them? Basically, what are you doing so that everyone else can copy it. And so if you guys go here on the QR code, you can get it completely free. And it will literally show you his logging in. He does it right through. It's amazing. He does it right through Facebook, social media, Craigslist, Zillow, and he pulls properties right off of there. Wholesale some of them, because again, we have different models than the typical wholesalers because we're selling as slow flips. So we're based on the monthly income, not based on the ARV. And wholesales them, and he currently has somewhere between 180 and 185, all filled and producing. And literally, if you watch these videos, he shows you live. I had him do it at my event last January, live on stage, pull up on the screens, the computer, and we made calls right there. It was amazing how good he is at it. He makes offers every single day. Most get rejected, but the ones he gets are good deals. So that is all I got to share with you guys. How did I do on time? We're good on time? So just before... we're great. It's only 8:30. We still got another 3 hours. So before Brian comes up and puts a big hook around me, what questions does anybody have? I think I answered pretty good, but
how do you find insurance companies to insure these properties that are in horrible condition that aren't working?
so we have 3 companies that we use. So most regular insurance companies do not insure them. They just won't, and I don't blame them for it because they want them to be fixed up. They'll come by and do an inspection and tell you, sorry, we can insure them, but you got to replace the roof and the door and this and that. We have 3 insurance companies that we do that will insure them. Now, more often than not, once the work is done, then we switch over to a regular insurance company.
Are you insuring them for the $30,000 you bought it for, or more?
I only insure for the amount to protect my lender. Then my people, they get insurance wherever they get it from. I don't check. They're allowed to get it wherever they want, but I get insurance just to protect my lender. Yes?
What system do you use to collect payments?
So right now I'm using Buildium. It's a software that does property management as well as collect payments. The reason I went with Buildium, I don't love them, but the reason I went with them is I used to use Pay Near Me, and I loved Pay Near Me. Pay Near Me is a system where you get a QR code and you can go into 7-Eleven and pay cash in 7-Eleven, and the money goes into your bank account. So it was awesome because our buyers, a lot of them are cash people. And then Pay Near Me got so big, they even have the IRS as a client now. They got so big that they fired us as a client saying we were too small. And which hard on all my people. We're used to paying for years with cash at 7-Eleven. Well, then I found out if you join Buildium has a deal with Pay Near Me, and so I have Pay Near Me again because I signed up through Buildium. But that's who I use.
Can you spell that for me?
Buildium, Buildium.
You said they go to 7-Eleven, okay?
Yeah, so not just 7-Eleven. There's like tons of places. CVS. Yeah, there's all. I always say 7-Eleven because typically it's everywhere, but there's like all kinds of places.
They give them cash and it converts it to
They'll get a QR code on their phone, and they scan it right on that little scanner right at 7-Eleven register, and it scans it, and then they hand them $800 or whatever it is, and then you'll get an email saying that Mary Smith at 123 Main Street just paid $800. And it goes right into your bank account because it's cash. They don't have to worry about it clearing, so it usually takes 2 days. And it's pretty awesome, especially because a lot of our people are cash people. So what do they do if they weren't using Pay Near Me? They're going to 7-Eleven anyway and buying money orders, right? They're buying money orders and then mailing them to me. Now they just go to 7-Eleven where they would have went anyway, and you get paid there.
So give them tell you what areas those places you go.
There's tons of, I say 7-Eleven because they're everywhere, at least in my area they're everywhere, but there's also all kinds of places, HCash Express, CVS, I think even Walmart has it now. There's tons of places that accept the payments. Dollar General, yeah, there's tons of them. So it's, they'll give you a whole list of all of them. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
You call it rent to own when you're
No,
staying down with somebody?
no, I say owner will finance or seller financing. Because rent to own, they're renting and then they have the ability to own. With this, they have, this is the way a judge told me when we changed to this, they have all the benefits and burdens of ownership from day one. Meaning they have all the rights as an owner from day one. Even though the deed's in my name, they have all the rights. Meaning they can turn around and sell it, they can rent it, they can do anything they want to do to it. They have all the rights as an owner, all the benefits and burdens. So we tell them it's owner financing. And then we explain to them exactly the way it works. It's full 30-year amortized, but the deed stays in my name until you pay it off. Who had a question?
So if someone quits paying you, are you responsible for funding any equity or?
No. So, and it's funny because people have asked that. They're like, yeah, but what if they did work to the house? I said, well, it's no different than if you got a mortgage from Bank of America and you did work to the house. They don't send you a check. You know, my answer within the group generally when the situations come up, right? This is not without there being situations. I would love to say it's all a cakewalk and nothing ever happens. Stuff happens. And usually my answer is, what would a bank do? That's the way I always tell my people. They're like, well, this guy said this or that, and I will answer saying, well, what would a bank do? If they had the loan from a bank, what would happen now? And I say, well, let's do the exact same thing. What would a bank do? And a bank would not send you a refund check if you have money into it. And so then neither would we.
Does building charge you to collect rent?
Yes, they don't charge us. I mean, they charge you a monthly payment. It starts at like $49 a month. It goes up based on your amount of properties. But then when they make a payment, depending on how they pay, if they pay with a credit card or cash, it goes down as little as like $1.99. Sometimes, like if your credit card, they charge you like 3% because that's the fee they're going to have to pay. But depending on which way they pay, there's different fees. Yes?
So keeping track of all the amortization payments, is there a software you use to do that?
I do not use a software, but however, I'm sure one exists. All I do is, I'm really a simple person. I just print out the full amortization schedule, and then you can literally just highlight, when a payment comes in, you highlight, and it tells you what the balance is.
So the problem is that when they pay more.
I don't accept more. It's actually written in the contract that no partial payments will be accepted without mutually being agreed on. And the reason is, and I tell them, I say, if you have a mortgage with a bank and you pay an extra $100 a month, it has great value to you because it's going toward the principal. If you pay me an extra $100 a month, it's just going toward next month's payment. So I tell them, keep that money in your own bank account, and then when you have a significant amount, $5,000 or whatever, then we can make a time and we'll re-amortize everything with that lower amount. Because if they send me an extra 100, it's not going to do them any good. They have softwares that do it, and they're super expensive and they're for banks, they're not for us. Yeah. Does anyone else have a question? Yeah.
When you sell it on contract for deeds, do they ask to do a title search on the property, and what does the closing look like?
So he asked, do they ask to do a title search, and what does the closing look like? Sometimes they do, and if they do, they're welcome to. It's on their dollar. Sometimes they want to close at an attorney's office, and if they want to, I'll let them, but they're paying the whole thing. 99% of the time, we just do the paperwork and we sign it on our own. There is no actual closing. Now, when we remote, like in St. Louis, we have an attorney out there that will let them come into his office, do the paperwork that we wrote up and sent him, and collect the money, and he charges us $300 for it. We do that only because we're so far remote that if we didn't do that, they would think it's some kind of internet scam. So we will have them go into a lawyer's office just to sign and drop off their money there. But it's not a closing. They're literally, the paperwork I sent, they printed it out, they're having the guy sign it and collect the money. They're not doing it. If they want to do a title search, they're welcome to. It's their money. I already did the title search when I bought it, but if they want to, they're welcome to. It's not part of the deal.
So I heard you speak with Brian back in 2018. I think your son was a Mississippi State fan.
Still is.
Mississippi State fan.
So that is why I got no sleep on Saturday, because they played Arizona and didn't start till 9:30 at night, and my flight was at 5 o'clock in the morning. And so it's a long story, but he became a Mississippi State fan when he was about 5 years old. He's fully obsessed with them. And so we travel all over the country watching them play every single year. We go to the World Series every single year. We have like 4 or 5 games already booked this year to go travel and see them. And then we go see pro games where the Mississippi State players go when they're on pro teams. So this is my life. I don't mind. Every time I complain to him, and I'll be like, "Bud, that's going to cost X amount." He's like, "But don't act like you don't love it too." And I'm like, "Well, I do. It's a lot, but it's what are you going to do? He's only going to be 18 in a couple of years." Hang on one second.
So you're paying your lender 12%, and with the buyer, is it just a wash? You charge them 12%?
Sometimes it's even less than 12%. So it depends on the state and depends on usury. Most states, the usury is at 12%, which is kind of ridiculous that the government can dictate the top price, even though when it was 18%, that was okay as long as the government said it was okay, but whatever. So we comply with whatever usury is. And so it doesn't, sometimes it's even lower than my interest rate. However, my interest rate is on 30 grand for 5 years. Theirs might be 10%, but it's on 90 grand for 30 years. So I'm still wildly profitable, even though it's a lower rate. Who had one right here?
Yeah, did you get to a point when you had so many of these that you quit doing the private money?
Yeah, so I don't use private money anymore, but I still teach it that way because that's the way it needs to be done. I actually don't buy much anymore. This year, I've probably bought 6. I don't actively look, like I'm not on, I get them sent to me all day on my phone, and if it's a good deal, generally I send it to somebody else in the group. I have, I read this in a book and I repeat it sometimes. I say I have something that most people will never have, and they're like, what? I'm like, enough. I said, I don't need any more. I still love to do it. I buy still because if a deal's in front of me, I'm not a fool. I'm not allergic to money. I'm still going to buy. but I don't need any more. And so I think I've only bought 6 houses this year. People in my group have probably bought 600. I'm just,
That way you don't have to wait for the cash flow.
yeah, and I'm just not, I'm not actively buying. I buy what comes across that I want to, but I have enough. Actually, I've talked about reducing down to 100, just to make life easier, because there comes a point where I'm not spending it anyway, and it's just more management, more stuff that I have going on, and I'm like, as they come vacant, like I have some selling right now, it's the question of, do I take it and buy 3 more, or do I just take it? I have some sub-2s still back from pre-bust, or just take it and pay off the sub-2s. So I still have some sub-2s from pre-bust. So, I'm like, why am I still paying on this thing? We just throw a chunk at it. Who else had a question? Yeah.
You mentioned that they don't get the deed until they pay it off.
Correct.
So, morbid question, but what would happen if you die?
If I die or they die, well, actually, I can tell you what would happen if either of us died. Nothing changes. It goes to the estate. So if I die, the property is still exactly as it is now, but I just have somebody else who's collecting the payment. And the contract is still valid and still in force. If they die, it depends if they have an heir or somebody else who wants to continue on making the payments, which I've had happen. More often than not, I've had an heir call me and say, hey, this is it. Where do I bring the keys? But they have all the benefits and burdens, which means they can do the exact same thing as though they had a mortgage with Bank of America. Interesting thing, and nothing that you asked, but I'll tell you, for those of you that ever bought with seller financing, which I'm sure you guys all have, I love seller financing, when that person that sold it to you passes away, which happens, more often than not, when the heir inherits it, let's say you owe them $100,000, and the heir inherits it, and it's $1,000 a month. Well, the heir wants the $100,000, but he's getting $1,000 a month. He doesn't want $1,000 a month. So then they call, and they're like, well, is there any way you can pay it? Well, I can, but it's going to be a different amount. You might end up paying $30,000. Every single time I've had that situation, it's been wildly discounted because the heir just wants a chunk of money. They weren't in the business. Their father or whoever was a smart one that was in the monthly cash flow game. They just want a chunk of money. And they see it as $1,000 a month, not the money of the balance. You get wild reductions when that happens. I know, morbid again, but that's what he asked.
Have you ever sold one on like a tax deed and you wait for it to cure, or you kind of steer clear of those?
So I have people in the group who are doing it. I wouldn't sell them on it. So he asked, would you sell on a tax when you have a tax deed waiting for it to cure? So in my market, we don't have tax deeds. We actually go to auction and you own it the next day. It's an actual sale. I have guys who are buying, I don't think out here, but in Mississippi, and they're getting unbelievable good-looking deals. But my advice is not to sell it because, and this is again, I feel like, well, we're the intermediary. If I sell it to you and terms and everything, and you're fixing it up and doing all the work and it's your home, and then that person has the right to cure it, I'm like, we kind of screwed him.
Get out of the way.
So that's why I tell him, I said, I'm not opposed to buying it on that deal, but I wouldn't sell it until it's yours. Because otherwise you don't know what's going to happen and you don't want to screw that guy you're selling to. So what? You could do it as a rental, yeah. You can do it as a straight rental in the interim while you're waiting on it. So one other thing, and then I'll stop. One other thing I wanted to tell you is you can also do what we call unconventional slow flips. And so I have done them with commercial buildings. I've done them with high dollar houses in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sub-twos, I buy sub-twos and sell as a slow flip. I did a commercial deal once, one of my best deals ever. I bought it was an 8,000 square foot old Masonic lodge, and I bought it for $195,000, and I broke off 3 lots and sold them to a builder for $65,000, $65,000, and $60,000. Got almost all my money back, and then I sold the building at $499,000 with $25,000 down and $5,000 a month. And it's in my 401k, and I get paid every month $5,000. I have nothing into it, $5,000 a month from a building I more or less got for free. So I tell you that just to tell you it works with other deals as well. I have guys in my group that did an 8-plex, and he got it for like $180 and sold it for $399 because, again, it was based on the cash flow for the guy. And the guy actually, after a year and a half, he had it all fixed up and rented out. He refied it and paid him off. And I was like, holy crap, what the great numbers. You couldn't have done that math with doing it as a traditional rental or as a regular rehab. But as a slow flip, it works because we sell the financing and the house comes with it. Anybody have any last questions before I let you go? So I'm going to end it just by telling you the same way I end my meetings every single week with my group, which is do something today your future self is going to thank you for. Because I'm constantly, people asking, well, how do I make money right now? I say, well, if you had this same question 5 years ago, you wouldn't have to worry about that now. But instead, they're like, well, I don't want to do it because I need money now. I'm like, okay, do whatever for now, but worry about this for your future. So your future self in, 2024 and 2029 is going to look back and be like, Thank your old self that you started when you did, so now you can be free in that year. It doesn't mean you stop everything else that you're doing. All right, guys, thank you very much. I think we're going to sit here and network and have a fantastic evening.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
You are very welcome.
Guys, they're going to close the building in 10 minutes.
Oh,
so
man.
I hate that.
I was joking when I said that before.
I like to sit around and talk, but I'm sure we can kind of loiter out in the front for a little while. But thank you guys for coming. See y'all next month. Oh, hold on, we're doing a gift card raffle. We're doing a gift card raffle. And I'm drawing 2. And I've got Keith Smith. I did not look at it. He actually needs it. And I've got James Cartwright. Courtright? Yeah. James Courtright.
So then you have to treat him almost like a squatter. What state is it in, Alabama? Yeah, you're going to have to treat him. He never signed anything, but he's in the property. You're going to have to treat him like a squatter.
Birmingham area, once a year he'll put a little money down and he won't start it. We never had to sign.
But so he didn't pay the down payment, but he's paying the monthly?
He'll pay the monthly for
Fairfield's great for this.
Pay the monthly for a while.
Fairfield's awesome.
It's been about 6 months now. He owes about 3 G's.
Yeah, so I would have to treat him like a regular squatter. I would just file. I would just, you have to.
Last question.
One of the things we didn't talk about is I almost think that you do